Welcome to the Scaleup Valley podcast, where we bring the best of the best to help you scale your business from 1 million to 1 trillion. Today's guests are Bence and Tamas, the founders of SEON. Bence and Tamas, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
Really a pleasure. Your track record is very inspiring, and also the journey that you have done together until now. It's quite impressive. So congratulations for the recent massive B round, and looking forward to get to know more. So feel free to introduce each other, and who wants to start?
I can kick off. I'm in charge of operations. I'm Tamas's co-founder. Back in the day, in the very early days, I was heading up business development for the initial first couple of years. And once Jimmy Fong, our chief commercial officer, joined, a bit over 2 years ago now, I took over and I pivoted into this day-to-day ops role, where I oversee people and talent, legal and compliance projects, office management, anything administrative falls onto my plate, with which I can help all of the other executive team members. And then soon I'm going to be moving over to Austin, and I'm going to be overseeing our amazing growth in the US, and scaling up our team is going to be my next project.
Sounds amazing. Tamas.
My name is Tamas. I'm the co-founder and CEO of SEON. We have started the startup with Bence during university, and I am more related to the product and vision part of the project. I really like to learn more about fraud and how to adapt our system to tackle more of the issues our customers are facing on a day-to-day basis.
Got it. And that's great. So we know what are the responsibilities of each of the founders of SEON, and now what is the mission of SEON, and what is the problem that you guys are solving with SEON?
Sure. Yeah. So maybe Bence can explain the origin story, and then I can jump on the product side and how do we actually tackle the problem.
I can give some color on the why behind the company, certainly. So Tamas and myself, we were good university friends a couple years back, and we were actually building a crypto exchange. This was when cryptos were nowhere near as popular as they are today. And after starting to accept credit card payments and starting to process credit card payments, we were faced with a bunch of fraud. So people were checking out with stolen identities and stolen credentials. And we quickly realized that if we don't solve the issue, then our business is going to burn to the ground. Because we were losing a bunch of money. And so we looked at the fraud prevention space back then. Everybody was aiming for enterprise sales, and we were having to sit through multiple discovery and sales calls. There was complex integration processes, very costly systems, and clearly we felt that we aren't the ideal customer profile for these companies out there. So we said, okay, let's build something in-house that's going to solve our issue. And then fast forward a couple of years, here we are today, where we're developing a full-on fraud prevention suite. We're working with clients like Revolut, Nubank, and Molly, to name a few of our flagship customers. And they're happily using our system, and we're solving massive fraud issues for them. And so pretty much what we've doubled down on over the years is, ease of integration, very simple cost structure. In fact, you can go on our website and you can find out what our pricing model is in a transparent manner. We have a public-facing API documentation. You can start a free trial if you click on our onboarding process on our website. So deep down, I think what sets us apart is our drive to democratize fraud finding, in the sense that we want to make it available and as easily accessible to as many fraud and risk managers out there in the simplest form possible, just like you would consume, on-demand services like Netflix or Spotify, to name a few. So that's our mission, and that's the why behind our company. Maybe Tamas, you can elaborate from a technological perspective what really sets us apart.
Yeah,
Sounds
so
great.
when we have faced these issues ourselves with this crypto exchange, we have realized that actually most of the customers who purchase the crypto from us, they always had an email address or a phone number for a contact point. You could capture their IP address and device details, and all this was invisible for them. So we could actually force them to upload their ID and provide a selfie, but we knew that in one hand, this is not a bulletproof way to solve the problem, because anyone can, as a criminal, acquire stolen ID scans from the dark web, which they can use to bypass those measures, as well as it's a friction in an onboarding process. So this can lead to churn, decreased user experience, and as well as it's quite expensive to verify an ID with different service providers. So they can charge up to €2 or US dollars for each check. So we have recognized that those fraudsters in the beginning always used a give IP address, let's say they were on a VPN, they use a throwaway email address. And when we have started to build our in-house tool, the main idea was also to base the initial risk assessment on these friction-free collectible data points, because everyone on the internet has an email address or phone number, and they also, since they use browser internet connection, they will have an IP address and device details. So we have based our product on these disciplines, and when we have started to actually work on SEON as the project itself, when we have pivoted, we also try to be very industry agnostic. So we try to have every and all the online businesses out there, not just from a specific industry or not just over a specific size. It's really easy to use our tool. And then when we have actually found a product market fit, which was, I would say, in the first 2 years, we have quickly realized that the best go-to-market strategy for us would be the so-called product-led growth. Essentially, it means that what we do today is providing a free trial, a self-boarding component. Anyone can prove an ROI as a business in the quickest manner, which is unusual in our space because most of our competitors are focusing on big enterprise clients. So that's really different. And we also have very in-depth public-facing API documentation. So they can access this website where they can read about not only the API documentation, but as well as they can see high-level workflows, they can see FAQs, a user manual, a knowledge base, which helps them to just fight fraud more efficiently. And it's all upfront. And also in terms of GTM, what we have realized is we should be very clear and transparent and also straightforward with our pricing. So we have decided to follow the pay-as-you-go model, usage-based pricing, which means that we only charge for the different consumption our clients are using our systems for, which is also quite unique in our space. So combining the platform itself by focusing on enriching data of customer digital footprint, and as well as this unique GTM strategy helped us to actually scale up rather quickly, especially in the last 2.5, 3 years. So we are also proud now to, close this Series B round, which would help us to further democratize fraud fighting across all industries and for any online business, literally.
Sounds an amazing vision and great differentiation and an unusual approach to the enterprise markets. I can see definitely the differentiation and the moat there. So, and in terms of the stage of growth, you have just shared that you have raised, and I also did at the beginning the B round. But in terms of headcount, how much have you raised it? Name of some investors. So give us just some stats on where you are in terms of stage of growth.
Sure. So we closed our A round early last year, and then pretty much 12 months later we closed our B round. Early last year, we were about like 40 in terms of headcount. And then now, beginning of this year, we just hit 200 full-time employees.
Wow.
Not long ago, actually.
Times 5.
So it's been quite an amazing growth journey. I mean, as you can imagine, hiring over 150 new team members in pretty much a 12 months time frame. That was quite a challenge. And I was actually, one of my greatest concerns was around how are we going to keep our company culture intact, and how do we, how do we get to the scale, making sure that everybody feels good about themselves. They still feel like a true SEON team member. But luckily we've arrived, and I think we've done a decent job. We did a bunch of team building activities. We have AMA sessions recurring, where Tamas and myself and other executive team members answer any questions that our staff may have towards us. So yeah, we do a bunch of things from that perspective. And then revenue wise, we closed an amazing year as well, because compared to beginning of last year and beginning of this year, we 3x'd. And again, we had a couple of amazing names that started using us, like Revolut, for example, Molly as well. So yeah, we had a good year. We had a good run.
It's always great to have growth by the book, right? So then you can choose the investors and the partners that you want to work with in the upcoming stages of growth. And we always need help, because with that kind of growth, a lot of more problems come on our way. But I think those are the great problems to have, right? So yeah. The worst problems is when we don't have the growth, we don't have the resources. Those are much more complicated problems to have.
Yeah, and it's a fun journey. You gotta enjoy the journey, obviously. So it's good. Yeah.
Awesome. And there is a curiosity out of the process, is that you have been building the company out of Hungary. Can you share a little bit more how it's been the experience so far, starting up Scaleup in Hungary, maybe without a lot of other role models and examples in terms of ecosystem, especially in terms of not the startup stage maybe, but the scale-up stage, right? So it's not easy to have a lot of peers to talk about that experience locally.
For sure. So I would say my 2 cents for this will be, Hungary is, of course, not a startup nation like Estonia, or even not so basic hub like London. So you definitely have to go global and international from first day. So even when we have started to look for our first investors, we went to international events abroad. We started to network with advisors and mentors who we could learn from, not specifically from Hungary, but that was really important for us to always, look over the border and just be sure that we are building an international business which is not locked in our own country. So we could actually meet and learn from local players too, but I think most of the advices came from people abroad, really. And then even if I look back and see like how we have started to acquire the first customers, then it was very important to go global and to go for players who are not located in our country. So we try to attract clients that are, in those hubs, and we had really often travel to places like London or Berlin. We went to the USA in the first couple of years, even still today. But it was in our DNA that we have to be there and we have to meet our clients also face to face in order to get started. And we haven't really been focusing on being a Hungarian business. So of course we have started out from here. We could find a good talent pool for engineers, and it's something that is possible to do from a place like this or any other country in Eastern Europe or around the world. But when it's about scaling up the business, it gets more challenging, because I think the hard part is to find those sales and marketing professionals who need to have international and global experience from previous startups and companies they have worked for. So when we have opened the London office about a bit more than 2 years ago, that's when we have really started to also scale up and think more globally, and it helped us to add those profiles to our story who we couldn't find out of Hungary. So I think it's very important to look at the map, like, hey, we have to be close to the investors, we have to go close to the clients, and really, like, from players in Eastern Europe, it's not really possible unless you want to focus on the local market, which was never our intention.
Got it. And in terms of headcount and offices, how are you guys split it to kind of understand where you are?
85% of our headcount sits out of Budapest, and then the rest is spread around London, Austin, and Jakarta. And obviously, London is the heaviest one right now, so we have about, I think, almost 15 heads sitting out of London, or maybe even higher, because we're hiring so many people. And then 5 people sitting out of Austin, and we have about a team of 7 in Jakarta as of today. So quite diverse from that perspective. And then we're aiming to scale up, especially in Austin, Texas. We want to get a larger footprint in the US from a business development perspective. So we're going to be around 20 in terms of a headcount out of the US in about 12 months time.
Got it. And it makes all sense to expand into the US, but let us know a little bit more about what is that rationale behind your expansion strategy. I was also curious to ask why the Indonesian office, if it is kind of up to serve Asian clients, if it is from a talent perspective. Maybe we can clarify that one first and then jump into the US discussion and the expansion strategy.
Sure. So we were looking, so on the one hand, we had a good revenue share from the APAC region, right? So we had a good amount of clients, even starting from the early days. And for us, Asia Pacific region was always strategically, we could actually remotely close clients quite easily, and fraud for them is a major issue. So we really felt like we have to focus on that region, and we got to open a local office there. Now, we looked at different regions, and Singapore obviously comes to everybody's mind. Very costly, quite saturated, lot of local regulation around company formation and whatnot. So we looked at what else can come in the picture, and we realized Jakarta has a really good talent pool, very good level of English proficiency. Everybody speaks English to a good level. And we were able to surround ourselves and find some good talent that perfectly fits into our company culture. And we brought them out to Budapest for like a 2-month time frame where they were able to, like a sponge, pretty much drain all the knowledge and information and just take it in. And then they went back, and now they're cultivating the same culture. And we have a good office there where they can get together and they go into the office. There's really good office culture, and they love going in there. So I mean, it was and it's not as expensive as Singapore when you look at it from that perspective. And interestingly enough, we were able to find also quite some DevOps talents out of Jakarta as well, which sometimes we struggled with after a certain point in Hungary. So yep, and DevOps for us is also important. So we have multi-time zone coverage. If something happens in the middle of the night, from an infrastructure perspective, it's really good that we have people sitting in multiple time zones covering that.
Right. Exactly. It makes all sense. We also have an Asian season in the podcast, and definitely Indonesia is the largest market in the region, and where Southeast Asian based companies scale up through the Indonesian market. So I was really curious about your approach into, as you said, the APAC region, or even the Southeast Asia region. And of course, you will also relocate yourself, Bence, into Austin, as you said before. So, which means one of the founders moving into a key market of growth, and also expanding the headcount in the US, in Austin. What has been your approach in terms of deciding the US as the main focus of growth, and why Austin?
Sure. Well, I think, look, it's no secret. The US is a very competitive market, and up until early last year, we didn't really have the resources to step into that market because every time, the first question from potential US customers was, well, great, do you have any US clients? Do you have a US office? Do you have people sitting on the ground? And for a very long time, our answers were no to these questions. And so after Series A, we started building out the team, and we started building some solid traction. And now we have a decent revenue share from the US, but we certainly, see much more potential, and we want to scale it up. And down the line, we feel that the US is a strategic market for us, and we certainly want to expand that revenue share. So that was the initiative in terms of why now and why at this point. As a European company, a lot of companies have failed with stepping into the US market. So we really wanted to have a decent strategic framework behind actually executing on that. And then now that we've also brought on board a really good executive team, which extends Tamas's and my bandwidth. I can actually safely say that, we can move a founder over, that would be myself, and I can truly focus on scaling up that team and cultivating the SEON spirits, also attracting key talent, even helping in closing deals, sharing information on a live basis, sitting in the office with our team there. And I think that's really important when you're tackling, expansion initiatives at the other side of the world, especially if it's the US, which is such a strategic market. So that's pretty much how we went about it, and the reason why now, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
And you are right. So having understanding what is the right timing to expand into the US can really be a great ally of growth, but at the same time can kill the company if we don't have the resources, or if it is the wrong timing to go into the US. And it's always opening a new markets. It's always a difficult jump, and especially for European companies. For the majority of the American companies, they can almost get into IPO without having to move to a second market. So usually, in the case of European companies, there is this bridge typically to the UK, and then from the UK to the US. That's the typical path. And of course, there are other players that still bet on within the European expansion. We are also seeing a lot of companies coming out of Spain, going through the Latin American route of growth, and less companies taking the Southeast Asia route of growth, because again, India and China are two continents, so super difficult to penetrate. Again, they don't need to get out of their markets to compete with other players. And then the other markets are super complex. Japan, South Korea, and of course Australia and New Zealand are approached via the UK or via the US in general. So just sharing a little bit the map here and the different expansion strategies possible for European companies, right? Awesome. And any other consideration or lesson learned that you would like to share on this topic, or should we move into more the fundraising angle, which is always appreciated from the ones who are listening to us?
Happy to share insights on the fundraising. Yeah.
Awesome. So of course, going through, I'm not sure if you also raised the kind of the pre-seed round, or if you have gone directly into the seed round, but what has been the difference?
Yeah, we actually
Okay.
had a pre-seed round. Yeah.
Okay, but just sharing a little bit the journey going from pre-seed into seed, from and to A and to B. Let's of course spend more time on the A rounds 12 months ago and now the B round. But for the ones who are considering to scale up and maybe approaching their A round, and then they need to also, when they are raising the A round, as I like to share, they need to be thinking at least not only in the short term, which is the next round, which is the 12-18 month cycle that you were able to shorten into the 12 month, but also understanding what they will need to do from the B to the C round, because a lot of stuff needs to be seeded during the A stage, let's say, and now during the B stage. So long story short, what have been some of your lessons learned during this fundraising process?
Well, I think, look, there's certainly, I think, looking back at the past couple of years, there's very much aggressiveness on the market, right? Like the dynamics were sped up, and I think from an investor's perspective, we did see that everybody was moving quickly, and there was a lot of hunger, and I'm not sure how that's shaping, but we do see a slowdown when it comes to deals being made. There's a lot of turbulence on the public markets, which I'm not even going to go into. But bear in mind that I think, looking at the fact that our company was growing really well, and it was probably in a very top percentile when we measure the performances of SaaS startups. We were also raising in a time when it was easy to raise, I should say, if I want to boil it down to a single summary.
Good timing.
Really good timing, and we're not going to play that down, So I'm not only going to say we're an amazing company, I'm also saying that we were at the right time. We were raising capital, and it was quite easy to raise. But on the other hand,
good to that's great to have both, right? So you add the numbers, so you would be able to raise independently of the market, but with that market, you were able to be even in a better position to raise capital. Right?
Yeah. So I think that's part of it. But then, answering your question, or maybe reflecting on what we did as a company, which is not related to the market dynamics, obviously. We had a very strong past couple of years in terms of revenue growth. We were able to focus, and we were able to scale up our business development team, and we did the right things in-house. So when it was around scaling marketing spend and bringing the right people for the marketing team on board in order to pretty much focus on demand generation and fill the top funnel from an inbound perspective, I think we did the right things. But also from an outbound perspective, when it comes to scaling the business development team, we added the right heads and we had the right strategy, hence why we had really healthy revenue growth and tripling our revenue numbers year on year. But that also means that we probably, by Series A, we probably found product market fit, right? Which a typical Series A investor is looking for at that stage. So we specifically knew which markets were able to perform in well and what our sales strategy is in those markets. And I think that's really important for Series A stage. Because that means that you just have to pour more capital, and now you're going to be expanding, and probably it's going to work out from that point onwards. And then between Series A and Series B, I think what was super important for us was, okay, now we have product market fit. Let's figure out from a more quantitative perspective of what we've been doing, what are the metrics and units behind it in terms of if we turn the knobs and levers over a longer term, are we going to be able to figure out how much capital we actually have to pour in here and what that's going to result in? And we were actually able to figure that out. So I think post Series A, what we really focused on was becoming much more metrics driven and actually making basing our decisions less and less on gut feeling, but more and more on our data that we had pretty much sort of extracted out of our business. And now we're able to understand that. And I think that was a big part of raising Series B was, okay, how well do you understand your business on a quantitative perspective? And are you able to pinpoint where you're headed over the long term? And that's how I think we drew up our Series B vision.
Yeah, I would add here that during Series B, we have learned that metrics are so important for a late stage investor. So you have to get your numbers straight and right if you prepare for something like that. So metrics like NDR, CAC payback, all these economics are super important for an investor. So during Series A, it wasn't the case. We weren't 100% sure about what are our key metrics, and it was a great vision. We had good numbers in terms of revenue growth, traction, product fit. We got very good feedback. Also, they did references on us. But what we have improved on during our B was more like this kind of competition from the investor side. So we have learned how to actually create a short list of investors and how to initiate conversations with them, how to set up the communication channels and what to share and when, and how to run the process. So the process is super important in order to increase your valuation. If you don't talk to many investors, then you might miss chances of just being competitive on the market. If they don't hear you and see you, then you have less chances of having the largest valuation possible. But obviously for us, we weren't focused on just getting the largest valuation and go with an investor who offers the most in terms of the company's valuation. We had our eyes on US expansion and still are. So we have actually rejected an offer which could be higher in terms of valuation than what we have got today. So we really been focused on getting just a partner and replicate the same experience we've had with the value added part as we have experienced with Scaleup during the Series A. So during this B, we have optimized for a smart money investor again. And for us, it's super important to get access to a network of angels, of advisors and mentors. So we can continue to find shortcuts in building the business and just learning more from those experts who we are not today yet.
Right. Great points. This for the ones who are starting or for the ones who are in the journey. And this is quite hectic. As I like to say, it's the Champions League of business or the Olympic Games of business. You can imagine just going from pre-seed to seed and seed to A and getting into a 1 million ARR company in such a short period of time, and then having this challenge of tripling or at least doubling revenue to stay in the game every single year. It's kind of crazy. We know that there are some missed quarters and sometimes we might face a very strong growth plateau, and it doesn't mean the end of the company, but at least that's kind of the standard and the expectation that when we raise capital, we are getting from an investor perspective and also from a founder perspective, because again, we want to have the chance of choosing the best ones to keep on the journey with us. And if we are not able to deliver the metrics, it will be very difficult to have that option, right? So as I like to say, it's not only from an investor perspective, it's also from the founder perspective. We want the best metrics possible to be in a strong position into that negotiation. And again, being in the right timing in terms of the revenue metrics, in terms of acceleration of the revenue metrics, and also in terms of the market dynamics. And in your case, it's great because you have some time until you need to raise again. So you can be also more conservative or less aggressive depending on the unit economics that you have at this stage. Okay, cool. So very good reflections on building a company out of Hungary, the expansion strategy, some fundraising lessons here as well. I think that's something interesting that we didn't discuss before we get into the final question and answer to wrap up, is keeping the balance of having maybe the tech or engineering and products based out of Hungary, and maybe the revenue functions scaling up in, for instance, in the US or even in the UK before. Different cultures, different time zones. This might become even a higher challenge as moving forward, and also avoiding having 2 companies or 3 companies with Indonesian office and only having a global company. So do you have any tips there? I know that's a lot of this we are still solving as we go, but what have been some of your lessons learned there?
Yeah, I think, and actually I'm starting to, funny that you asked, because I was just discussing with our VP of people about this topic just last week, I think. We certainly have to start focusing on being inclusive when it comes to our global talent base, our global workforce. And some simple things that come to my mind is making sure that if there's a recurring meeting with multiple stakeholders in the calendar, which is like in European hours in the afternoon, then that's like nighttime for Jakarta. So maybe just flipping it up every 2 weeks or something, right? So I don't know, you have week A, you have week B. On week A, you cater for morning hours, and that's suitable for, I don't know, half of the world. And then on week B, you cater for afternoon hours, and that's suitable for the other half of the world. So these are just simple things that you have to be very mindful of. And the more and more you grow, the more and more you're going to face these issues, and the more and more you're going to have to develop and think about it in terms of how you cater for that. So yeah, we're in the midst of actually building these bridges and making sure that everybody feels fully included. But on the other hand, you just have to catch up with your workforce regularly. So you have to reach out, and even though you're not sitting in the same office, I do believe that you just have to jump on regular check-ins and ask how somebody feels, because a lot of times you can't expect them to tell you their problems.
Yeah,
and probably they're not going to. So that's why you have to reach out a lot.
What we do, I think, very well is actually every new employee from abroad are invited for a 3 weeks training. You started off with 2 months, but realized like 2 months is just like a bit of an overhead for everyone. So 3 weeks is something suitable for most people to take on a trip. So I'm from US, Indonesia, and even from London, take up here for 3 weeks to be closer to the wider team, and just take home away all the learnings they can have. And as well as the London team comes out to Budapest every month on the 3rd week. So I was the whole team. If everyone, if they can make it, that they're invited here to spend 3-4 days in our office over here. And as well as I would say that there are some good technologies which we have implemented to keep the different teams more closer. So we have put these conference call bars in the conference rooms, which help them to just very easily jump on Zoom calls with. So it's a special tech tool. It can be equipped on top of a TV, and then it's a wide angle and voice is very good and doesn't require to connect it to a computer, but then it can be open up as a Zoom room, so helps to reduce the latency and have very very clear communication. So we have these in almost every conference room, in every office we have, and it's super useful to be closer to the team that way, so they don't sit around the table with their own computers joining Zoom, but you can see like a complete picture of the team sitting in a room. I think it's super useful. We have different plugins and tools installed on Slack to start like random coffee chats, to we do pools. We have different initiatives like water coolers to make everyone more open and inclusive towards our teammates. So we try to always look for these useful methods of just keeping everyone close, even virtually, because we are following a hybrid model. So many of our employees and teammates are working from home, which is of course something we have to account with.
Good tips, and I really like the onboarding journey, and it is more than proven even for the companies who are 100% remote, that coming together from time to time, it helps the remote experience. It's much better to have those touch points in person that then make the remote work much more effective. So let's come for the last segment of the show, where I will ask you quick answers in a set of questions, which are only 6. The first 3 are much more a reflection on your journey, and the last 3 are much more resources that you'd like to share with other peers that are listening to the show. So if you'd have the opportunity to have a coffee with your younger self at the beginning of this journey, what advice would you offer to your younger self? Tamas, for instance, you want to start now?
Yeah, I would say to my younger self, like, go as big and as crazy as possible. So, I found that when I was young, I was always worried about consequences, and then I was maybe too risk averse of just, let's say, packing my stuff and moving abroad, or leaving everything behind, and these things really can, limit you, I think. And all the great things happens out of your comfort zone. So I think if someone wants to launch a business like we have done, then you have to go like, really, really, risk-taking approach. But of course, educated risk only. But I would have probably make some bets earlier than I have made actually. Maybe let's say like I have finished university, but maybe I'm thinking now it's not really useful to have a diploma, and we are working on our own business, and I don't think ever I will apply for a job where it will be reviewed, that I have a diploma or not. So I think maybe if I would have we would have maybe started earlier with have our journey, because then we would be way ahead of our competitors by now. But then it didn't happen. Then we have just finished university and went as a full-time startup founder into the journey like 2017. So everything was going a little slowly in the beginning, but it was mainly because we were, and I was myself like more risk averse than now. So Bence?
Yeah, from my end, sorry. So from my end, probably around, and this was something that we had received from I had received this advice from a founder as well. But if I could tell my earlier self, is focusing on culture earlier. I think that would have been important, and even drafting up what our cultural values are. Because in the early days, you don't really think about that. It's sort of natural, and you have so much on your plate that you don't focus on these things. But yeah, if we would have maybe drafted these cultural values on paper earlier, and we would have cultivated it to a better extent, I think that's good stuff. So there's definitely my advice to any founder, really early founder out there. Like, the earlier you focus on that, and the earlier you draft that up, and the earlier your team members are aware of that, the better.
And what are you the most proud of on your journey so far?
Yeah, I think we have multiple milestones behind us and ahead of us. So let's say the most proud was actually when we have announced the latest funding round. You know, like every milestone is getting bigger and being more of kind of like satisfactory for my staff. So I can't say like, hey, this was specifically like the best or the most proud moment. I think every step and every new achievement is just something that makes me more and more proud of.
That's it.
I'm from my end, I'm proud of our team. So I'm really happy that, you know, everybody feels like we're on a mission to, you know, to save companies from fraud. And I truly, when I come in the office, I can see that in the spirits, and I'm really proud of that. So that makes me really happy as a founder.
Worst advice ever received?
I would say the worst advice was when someone told us like, oh, we have to hire expensive salespeople to sell to enterprise type of clients, and you know, it's actually not something that we have done because we have realized that the type of business we try to build is more bottoms up, and then I think we'll be like way we would have way less traction compared to now. We would hunt those big mammoths and look for big clients, you know, as our new potential customers. So we have decided to go with more like smaller clients, medium-sized clients, and then it helped us to actually work with a shorter sales cycle and also, you know, grow together with those clients. So I think if we would have followed those advices which were around like being more an enterprise-focused company, then we would have potentially failed because everyone else were doing the same, and we would try to do the same as everyone else, which is usually not the best approach if you are an early stage company.
Yeah, also there was a point when we had an acquisition offer. This was after seed funding round, and some people were advising us to actually sell the company, but in the end, we decided not to. But that was not good advice, I don't think. I hope you agree on that, Tamas.
Yeah, it was really
decision. The asset is now much more valuable. So, favorite book?
Yeah, I can say it's No Rules by Reed Hastings, so the founder of Netflix. We really resonate well with their culture. We try to be also very open-minded, candid, and I really like the book, so I can highly advise to any startup founders. So I'm not big on business literature, but this was really useful for me to understand like how you can build a high-functioning, high talent density team.
Love it. Bence, do you have any? It is not it's not mandatory to. If there is any resource.
I'm gonna go for 48 Laws of Power. I read that quite a long time ago, and there's some interesting, certainly some interesting takes in there. So yeah, I'll just go with that one.
Got it. Favorite movie or series, if you prefer?
Yeah, I think I have just watched a really good series I can recommend called We Crashed. And I'm not saying that, you know, like it was completely true to how a startup works, but it was the closest movie or series I saw so far, which presents how the dynamics can work between a board, between a founder, and how founders can think about their business and vision. So I really liked it. I can highly recommend it. It's a new series, so I just seen it, but it resonated a lot also about how we were thinking of specific relations and how we handled specific challenges before.
Can you repeat the name of the series?
Yeah, We Crashed.
Got it. Okay, super curious now too.
It's on the WeWork story, right?
Yeah.
Tamas?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's recommended it to me last week, but I still have to catch up on that one. For me, I don't know. Maybe if it's a series, I like Billions a lot just because of the energy. That's awesome.
And finally, the favorite podcast, of course, excluding this one.
I can recommend the Product-Led Sales podcast. It's really useful to hear other marketers and sales professionals to express how they combine product ledness and also a top-down strategy. So I think in the future, most SaaS businesses will be like product led because that's the way to go. And even if it sounds like a buzzword, I think it's good to emphasize how useful is it to appeal to the end users and to the developer community. But as well as it's quite tricky to understand how you can talk to more of a high level decision makers and how you can speed up a onboarding software sales process. So really good podcast. I can recommend it.
I'll go with 20 VC. I like 20 VC. I've listened to a bunch, but also sometimes I listen to some Joe Rogan as well. I mean, there's interesting people talking on there, so another very very different angle, but also interesting.
Absolutely. Tamas and Bence, congratulations for your path, and thanks so much for making the time to share your journey with us. And you are always welcome to come share the upcoming chapters of your journey.
Much appreciated.
Cool. Yep. Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
A pleasure. And to our community, as you see, we keep bringing you the best stories, the best advice to help you scale your business from 1 million to 1 trillion. See you soon and keep scaling.